with another episode of the Footy GameDay SquadShow. I'm your host Cal, and today I've got Tom and Kerm with me. It definitely hasn't only been 5 minutes since our last video. We definitely didn't run off and get quickly changed to start this one off. But we did promise you that we would be pumping out these videos after our month hiatus, and we're going to get through them so that your team is covered for the start of the season. Speaking of start of the season, guys, are you excited?
Absolutely. I'm so keen to start opening some packs. You guys have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm more excited for, the start of the AFL season or just to start opening some packs on the Game Day Squad's platform, because I'm just excited. Oh, man, I can't even... We'll get into that later. I'll look at some of these cards.
You know the answer is Game Day Squad's platform, which launches on Monday. We cannot wait, guys. We are as excited as I think everyone else that is already following us on our Instagrams and socials and buying pre-sale packs. We want to play our platform too. We cannot wait for it. So if you haven't heard of Game Day Squad, head over to our website, go check us out, our socials. We've got heaps going on. Go back, watch our other YouTube videos on the other series as well, because we're always dropping little things about our game. But today, we're going to look at Hawthorne. What we're doing in this series is we're looking at them, how they went last year, how we think they're going to go this year, and then really put our fantasy hats on and be like, what players in the team are going to do that. So, interesting year for the Hawks. What do you reckon? We get stuck into it?
Let's do it.
Let's get right into it, mate.
Alright, so what a weird year last year was for the Hawks. 7 wins, 13 losses, 2 draws, and they finished 14th on the ladder. And I think having 2 draws in a season sums up just how weird it was for the Hawks. Very hard year to go back and have a look at because it was very forgettable. So we always have a look at their highlights, lowlights of the year. The highlight I have is Sean Burgoyne notching up 400 games. And
that was special.
Loved that he did that game against Port Adelaide. Obviously the team he won his first premiership at, before he jumped over and won, 4 more or something with the Hawks. So, yeah, no, I love seeing that.
Just quietly,
Just quietly, yeah. Must be nice. But on the flip side, I had the low light as the succession plan and the whole Clarkson and Mitchell debacle. You guys know I think Clarkson's the best coach in the AFL. 4 premierships and dominant. I think that sort of, sums it up. But yeah, the fact that he's gone and he's now a free agent out of the club and the way he did it, yeah, it does leave a bit of a sour taste. So, yeah, how do you guys see the year for the Hawks?
For me, and we spoke about this offline, it was just such a nothing year for the Hawthorne club. They've been such a dominant team through our childhood as well, because they've obviously had Sam Mitchell. They had such a dominant team with Buddy there as well. They won 4 in a row. Was it 4 in a row?
No, they won
3 in a row.
4 in 3 years. No.
Yeah.
No, sorry, they won 08 and then they won 3 in a row, and then they didn't quite top the lines.
Yeah, so they're such a far away.
Still pretty good, right?
Yeah. Just quietly again. But no, they're such a far away team from that team that we saw in 08 and going forward. So it was such a nothing year. Tom Mitchell's by far and away their star. But yeah, we'll talk about later on whether that's a fit or not.
No, go straight into it. Let's hear your star of the year. Tom Mitchell, you had down.
Yes, yeah, Tom Mitchell was my star of the year. Again, leather poisoning. The guy cannot stop finding the ball. 20 handballs, 15 kicks. My only gripe is, can we switch that around? 20 kicks, 15 handballs, because as we know, kicks are worth more fantasy points than handballs. But he just found the footy. He was impacting goals, only 0.3 goals a game, but when they needed goals, he stepped up. But 131 GDS fantasy score, that's going to take you a long way if you can pack him this year.
Yeah, made that all Game Day Squad team, if you will. 5 midfield spots. He got the 5th spot there. Obviously, head and shoulders at the club. Tom, I think you went the same path.
I did, and for a multitude of reasons. We've spoken about how classy he is, but just go through some of the stats from last year. Ranked 1st in uncontested possessions, 1st in handballs per game, 1st in effective disposals per game, and 1st in total disposals per game. He knows how to find the footy. He knows what to do with the footy. Great player. How is he not the star of the year?
Yeah,
I feel like sometimes the footy just finds him. Doesn't even go looking for it. Just ends up in his hands.
Just when you're reading off those firsts, literally best in the league at all those different categories, that is exactly what you want from your fantasy football midfielder. And that's why he's my star.
I know we were giving Kerm some stick at the Gold Coast.
Thank you for this.
And I've continued doing that because, it is easy, low-hanging fruit. Does it hurt you to say Tom Mitchell, knowing you're the Swans fan?
Look, man, it hurts heaps for sure. We've spoken about it with the Suns, with GWS, just letting go.
Yeah.
Man, letting go of such a great player, and we really could use someone like Tom Mitchell right now in the midfield as well, which is the reason it hurts even more, because at the time we had so many great midfielders, and you could make the point, yeah, maybe we didn't need him, but you know, you look 3 years, 4 years down the line, that was the wrong decision ultimately. And there's two things I don't like in the AFL, and it's Collingwood and Hawthorne. So the only positive is that Hawthorne aren't doing so great, so at least that makes me feel a little bit better about the situation.
No, fair enough. Well, I'll make it easy for you guys to rip into me, because my star of the year, I zagged a bit. I went Chad Wingard. Obviously, a player.
Whoa.
Whoa. I love this guy. When he was at Port, I thought he was going to be the thing. Obviously, it didn't work out. He left. He wanted the money. That fair enough. I understand why he left. We weren't going to pay him. We had too many people, and he found himself at Hawthorne, like we said, when they were sort of coming over that premiership window. So they did have money to spare. Why I had him as the star of the year, as you can see on screen there, he was the 4th highest forward. Which, again, when we look at his numbers, he was only averaging 103. So he's not your premium sort of mid-moral. He's not your easy sort of one like Mitchell, which is just a surefire thing. But I seriously didn't think that this guy was ever going to come back to the potential that he had when he was at Port. Like, that guy, two-time All-Australian, and is second and third year. So I really thought that, you know, off-field, he'd gone. We're never going to see the best of him again. But he did really turn it around. And as a forward, obviously he runs through the middle a little bit, but to do that in a Hawthorn team that struggled, I think that's really impressive. And I did want to give him his flowers where he deserves them. So congrats there, Wingard. You've got a little bit of my love back, but yeah, I still do miss you. You can come back anytime you want. What about the other side, guys? Disappointments of the year, and remember, we're only going to give one because there could be a few.
Yeah, there could be a few for Hawthorn last year, but ultimately, and this could be a little bit harsh as well, but I went with James Worpel. And it's because I felt like he regressed a little bit in his production. And in the Corona Ball season 2020, which we all don't want to remember, he almost averaged more disposals in that year than he did last year in 2021. So 19 disposals 2020, 21 disposals in 2021 with, I think, 30 minutes less game time. For me, that's a massive regression. He was down on tackles, he was down on marks, he was down on goals, just down on every single category. And there could be a multitude of reasons why. We saw Chad Wingard, as you spoke about, running through the midfield. Jager O'Meara was back. We don't like him, as he left the Suns at a crucial time. But no, James Worpel.
We're all hurting. Look at us.
We got to cheer up. Cheer up. No, James Worpel, when he's on, he's a gun. When he's not, he's obviously not. But he's one to watch going forward, because when he does find the footy and can get consistent touches, he's one of the best fantasy assets you can get. And he is still young. So see how he goes early on in the year. But for me, last year, he was very, very average.
Fair enough.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, he definitely was average is the perfect way to say it. For me, I've put Sean Bergwijn in, and this is not disrespecting his play. He's 39 years old, guys. What do you expect from someone who's 39, playing one of the most taxing sports in the whole world? AFL footy is the perfect combination of fitness and physicality. He has been doing it at the best level for so long. This was completely expected that he wasn't going to be at his best for the year. His fantasy production were all-time lows, again, expected. It's more if old father time was catching up. You know, he's nearly 40 years old, still playing. There are not many players ever that have done that. There's very few. He was nearly one of them, first of all. But he can now enjoy a great retirement, knowing that he did exactly what he needed to do throughout his whole career. Always put his teams in better positions to win games. So huge respect for Bergwijn. Enjoy retirement, mate. It's well earned, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think we can speak for all of us when I say he's a footy legend. For sure. He won so many premierships, played such great footy, changed the way that a midfielder can play football, the way he pushed forward and used his legs, bounces, everything. His run game was so crucial for Hawthorn through that such dominating period when they had so many ball getters. The run came from Sean Bergwijn. So, yeah, I think he's one of the footy legends who will be remembered, and, yeah, enjoy retirement, Sean Bergwijn.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better.
Yeah, I remember watching him play in Port's one and only flag back in 2004. I was a little kid, and now he's still out there. Yeah, wild. I'll miss him, and I know we were harping on about him, but I think credit where credit is due, right? Like, it's one thing being the star of your team, but then just having that player who just plays his role perfectly. Like, we all agree he's a gun, but he was never best and fairest, never a Brownlow. He was just sort of one of those guys, you put him in the team, will do his role, and I'm sure Alistair Clarkson and Mark Williams just loved him for that. So yeah, my disappointment of the year. I've stayed on my Port theme here. So I said Burgoyne was the highlight of the year. I've given you Chad
It's
Wingard.
the Port episode.
Yeah, it's the Port. You know what? I had
Every
to
episode is the
I had
Port
to spice
episode.
you I had to spice you Hawks up a little bit. But I've actually gone Jarman Impey. And
Okay.
this one is a bit tough. Very similar back to when I did with Tom Lynch in the first episode for the Crows, where the disappointment is not for the year he had, but just the fact that it got shut down because of his ankle injury halfway through the season. He was having a career year. He was on fire. He was one of the actual shining lights for the Hawks that you'd actually be really happy with. So the disappointment isn't in him, but just the way that, obviously his season got ruined, because fantasy owners would have loved to have just had him keep rolling with those 101 points, which you can see was pretty good. So yeah, sad to see that for him, because I feel like he's set up as a player who should benefit from the new rules and the running off halfback, etc. So yeah, keen to see if he can bounce back next year and potentially see a bit more improvement going forward as hopefully the Hawks improve their footy. But let's look at the report card. I gave them a D. I just think the year sucked. They just wasn't exciting.
Yeah.
I watched a little bit of Hawks games, but I didn't enjoy it when I did. It just wasn't good footy, and then everything off field as well. Just with the whole Mitchell coming in and Clarkson leaving. So I think their footy on field was probably a C, but just all that field off field just give it to me for a D. So
Yeah, and I sort of looked at their season in the same vein. I gave them a D+, and for the same reason. So I won't touch on it, but yeah, a nothing season for me.
Yeah, and same here. I went with Kerm, a D+ as well. They haven't been in September footy since 2018. They do have some young pieces and some young talent to build around, and some, great moments throughout the year as well, as you mentioned, Callum. Just last season wasn't it for me. You can see by how they finished in the 2 draws. D+ is pretty fair.
Yeah, so that puts them at a D+ ranking, which you can see there, which is on line with Carlton and the Suns. So yeah, we'll see how they bounce back next year. Righty guys, I'd love to say that the Hawks are going to get a little bit more interesting this season than they were last year, but as you can see there with my season predictions, I think it's going to get worse. I have them completely bottoming out. They've been coming down the mountain for a while. I see this as potentially the lowest season that they're going to get. First year with a coach, never know how Mitchell's going to go with the full pressure and everything. There's some good players in there, but we'll get into we'll talk about some of the players we like, but I just don't know they have enough good young players, and I just don't think we said like Mitchell and Wingard and those sort of guys just don't have the help they need to really be pushing much higher. So I can see them actually finishing bottom of the ladder and having an awful year. I could see them doing not quite well, but I can see them getting up to like 12th, but I don't see them getting anywhere near the finals. Do you guys see it that way?
Yeah, I can't see him touching finals. And they do get some pretty key players back, like James Sicily and Gunston, who are big inclusions for them, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. I can see them sliding even further than they were last year. But yeah, I think finals for them is an absolute write-off. I can't see him making it.
Yeah, and look, I'm going to have to agree, but, do you really think they'll be worse than North Melbourne, Callum? I don't think they'll bottom out. I don't think they'll be the worst team, but they're not going to be too great. I don't see them making the top 8 this year, like you mentioned, Kurt.
We'll get on to North, and we did get in some early fights with some North fans that loved coming after us on Twitter after some early comments. We're still new, and they're coming after us. Come on, guys. But did they watch their team play for the last 3 years? Anyway, I digress. I think the North will bounce back a little bit. I do think Hawks will jump over, drop below them. There's a little bit more. At least with North, we'll get to. There's a few players that I'm really keen to watch. I don't know if there's that many I'm super keen to watch with the Hawks. So I think that's a good place to start. Let's take off our AFL hats and put on our fantasy hats though. Let's have a look at how we break them down. So we go, who are the players now in your best 22 for this upcoming Game Day Squad footy season? Who do you have knocking on your door and who are you avoiding? Kerm, I think you've got the first crack at this. Who have you got?
I do, and the pig himself, Tommy Mitchell, will be in my best 22 if I can get him. He's the best ball winner in the league. Ball ends up in his hands. We spoke about him before, and I'm sure we'll speak about him again. But Tom Mitchell will be in my best 22. knocking on the door of my team, I've actually got 3 guys. 2 of them are defenders, one's a forward. James Sicily, who's coming off an ACL injury last year, he proved that when he plays down back consistently, he can be one of the best intercepting defenders in the league, and especially in fantasy. So I'll be interested to see how he comes recovering off an ACL. I've also gone with young Will Day, who they picked up in the draft last year. He really showed some good signs last year in his rookie season, trying to slot into that Sicily role. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of dynamic works when they're both playing in the team and fit. Will Day's actually picked up a niggly injury this preseason, so he might be slow to start round 1, but he's definitely someone I'm interested in. And Chad Wingard, who was Cal's star of the year, I think he's probably going to end up in my team at some point. That's why he's knocking on my door. But I just want to see how the dynamic of the team sort of starts with Gunston back, Liam Shields, who I'm going to be speaking about next, as you can see on your screen. He should be playing some more forward time. We'll see how that works in pre-season games. I just want to sort of dip the toe in and see what it looks like first. And I am avoiding Liam Shields. Unfortunately, he's been so good for Hawthorne. He's been an unsung hero for so many years. He's gone under the radar with the likes of Mitchell, picking up all the footy. But Shields has been so good for them for so long. He's just getting a little bit older and getting less more midfield time. So Liam Shields, unfortunately, I will be avoiding.
Yeah, great list, and quite similar to mine, looking at it. Best 22, Wingard and Tom Mitchell. We spoke about the goal kicking of Wingard. I want a player like that in my team because it does score so well in fantasy. Tom Mitchell, as you mentioned before, gets leather poisoning every game. I don't know how he backs it up week on week. Knocking on my door, Scrimshaw and Day, and you can notice they're both defenders, and we're looking at this sort of trend with Hawthorne and how maybe they're not going to be so great and they are going to slide down, which means they're going to be doing a lot more defending. So I think there's a huge opportunity that some of these defenders are going to really bump up their fantasy scores this year. I don't know exactly who it's going to be. There's actually a great selection to choose from. You mentioned Sicily. Some of the other guys there. Someone's fantasy game is going to go to another level. It's about picking and choosing who it's going to be. So that's going to be a backline to be watching very closely early on in the year to see if you can get some value out of it. And avoiding for me is Gunston. I know you mentioned him coming back in. Yes, he's a great player. He's also, getting on that little bit of the older side and having that much time away from the footy. And with Chad Wingard playing so great, I don't see him coming back in and being a great fantasy player. I see him being a really good role player on the team.
I couldn't agree more with that Gunster pick. Coming off an ACL, 30 years old now. When he was playing his best footy and his best fantasy footy, he was working up the field a lot, getting a lot of those wing marks, taking a lot of kicks. So Jack Gunston for me, he's not my favourite pick either for Hawthorne.
Yeah.
For Sean Callum, what about your list, mate? Take us through what you've got.
The tumbleweed.
I know. When we put this together, and again, full disclaimer, everyone knows we were away for a month with COVID and stuff. So we did all our slides. We had everything ready to go. Hence why we're pumping these out at the moment. And the only thing we're doing is changing our shirts and recording them all very close together. I don't know what I was thinking not having Tom Mitchell in my best 22.
Yeah. Are we making a live change now?
Us last episode in the GWS, now you this episode in Hawthorne, mate.
Yeah.
Take us through. What was the thought process in not including a player like Tom Mitchell into your
Is this a live
best
change?
22?
I think we're witnessing a live change.
Yeah, this is a live change because I think, and I'm looking at my notes, and everything I say here is good about him, but we only get 5 spots in the midfield. That's the thing. So I think my logic would have been, you can only fill it up with 5 people. Are we sure we want to have someone like him? And I just wonder, and this is always a thing that would cloud over my head, and it does a lot of people, maybe Mitchell's an exception, that he went to Hawthorne to win a premiership. And he is the complete opposite end of that. Hawthorne might have the worst sort of list at the moment in competing for a premiership. And that would annoy me. And then you just wonder, is he doing the preseason? Like, what's he getting up and about for? Like, maybe he just loves footy that much. And we've seen, there's no reason why this guy won't come back. But there's always that risk that he comes back and he's like, well, what am I doing here? And yeah, so maybe that's what I thought. But again, I look kind of silly now not having him in my best 22. But you know what? I might live switch it back just for the drama to see what happens.
Live
switch. But with Wingard, I just, another one I said before, special place in my heart. he's an up and down sort of guy. I want to have him in and around my squad to bring him in when he's playing well, but again, too much uncertainty about how many forward stuff, how many goals, etc. he's going to get, so I'm getting rid of him. I want to talk more about the player I'm avoiding, because
This is interesting.
this is one where maybe you sold high, not that you sold him and got anything back for him, Kern, but normally we talk about all the players that have left the Suns and gone on to do good things, but this guy, when he came onto the scene, the level that everyone was like talking to him about, did he win Rookie of the Year? Awesome player. And then he's already 28. Like, to me, that's kind of mind-boggling that, hey, he's already 28 and his footy career's kind of coming, almost halfway gone. And it's like, what has he done? I know he's had his injuries and things like that, so it's probably a bit unfair. And again, what have I done type of thing. So if I feel bad sort of saying that, but just for the expectation we had for this guy, never really got to it. And I just feel like some people will sit there and be like, maybe this is the year where he just bursts onto it and out of nowhere fulfills that potential from 10 years ago. But yeah, I just don't see it. I'd be avoiding him at all costs.
I agree 100%.
We're a happy team at Hawthorne.
Alrighty, Tom, we were just having a good discussion off air, and I said, let's bring this on air because it was going in a good direction. And that's around how a player like Tom Mitchell won't be traded. And then imagine if he was in the NBA, a team would be looking to offload him, get him to a winning team, try and get more draft picks and things. But in the AFL, it doesn't work like that. We don't see those blockbuster trades. But you were talking about how in Game Day Squad, we're actually going to see some really cool stuff in that space.
Yeah, so let me get into it. So, when you're creating your team, you become the manager of the coach of the team, and you're going to acquire different cards or NFTs, or whatever you want to call them, through playing the game, potentially buying packs, however you want to go about it and however you strategize. The best thing about our platform, though, is that if you pull a player and let's say your midfield is stacked and you've got another pretty good midfielder that's come into your list, you don't have to play him and sit him on the bench because your midfield's so great. You can look at other managers or coaches' teams and try to find a card or a player that you would like instead and propose a trade to them. And the thing is, they don't have to accept it and there's no obligation that they will. But if you can send a good enough trade with some value going both ways and they agree, then you can essentially take on a card that someone else has pulled and then put them into your lineup. So we can see these sort of blockbuster trades that, we are robbed from in the AFL. We don't get to see this. Like the other week in the NBA, we had James Harden traded for Ben Simmons and a couple other pieces. And that just goes crazy. So our platform is going to allow you to do that, which I think is one of the coolest aspects of it. And it's going to take a lot of strategy in order to figure out exactly what you're looking for and what price you can get for someone.
I love that because we're
That's
still
so
talking
cool.
about the Chris Judd and Josh Kennedy trade as like that's the only big trade that's ever happened in the AFL. So we're going to have peer-to-peer trading, which is going to be awesome. Now, that's not going to be there for the start of Game Day Squad, the launch on the 28th, but that is a feature that will be coming out in Season 1. But also, Tom, I think as well, even if you don't want to trade, you can just put them on the transfer market and sell them for AUD straight away. So you can put them on that. So, yeah, we're going to see some of those trades and actually see the value of a player like Tom Mitchell. Like, how many Chad Wingards would you need to get one Tom Mitchell back? And, yeah, I'm really keen to sort of see some value of things like that. So that's going to be an exciting part of Game Day Squad. I know, you've just said you can't wait for, I can't wait for, and I'm really keen to sort of get involved in the community and start trading and finding out just how valuable my Port Adelaide youngsters are. If it's just me that values them so high. But what about some future stars of the Hawks? Who have you got down there, Kerm? I think you're up first.
I am, and I went with Will Day. I've spoken about him briefly before. He will be knocking on the door of my team straight away in season 2021. But he's only played the 16 games, and he showed a lot of promise down back. 11 kicks, 8 handballs, 5 marks a game, which is really good output for someone who's only 20 years old and only played a handful of games. I think he could be someone who locks down a position down on that half-back flank and becomes a really important player for Hawthorne. And he could be a very important player for my team as well.
Yeah, great pick. And again, we're going with these themes of defenders for these teams we're predicting that, aren't going to do so well in the next season. And I've done exactly that as well. It's Jack Scrimshaw. And we talk about, this correlation with team success in fantasy production, but it works quite the opposite with defenders in our game. So he's at the young age of 23 years old and he doubled his GDS fantasy output from the 2020 season in the 2021 season. He's heading towards cracking that 100 fantasy game point average. And, if he continues to improve his game, Similarly to the year prior, I can't wait to see how good he can be in the next couple of seasons to come. He's no set and forget player yet. I'm not trying to make that mark. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was to change in the next 2 to 3 years and that he did become a player that is locked into people's lineups.
No, I love that. I love that. I'm going to make a big call here. So we just had our NBA podcast come out today, and at the start of that, our tip-off question was, "What's the worst NBA take you've made?" So I've had that come back to bite me this week, but I'm going to make a big one here. I think Josh Ward, who is my future star, just been picked up at number 7 in the draft from the Hawks. I think he's going to be one of the top players in the league. I think this guy has the potential to win a Brownlow. I think he's going to be that good. I'll give you some stats for maybe people who haven't came across Ward. So at under 18 level, he averaged 30 touches a game. So again, you can think of this with your fantasy hat on. You can think of this with your AFL stat on as well. He was captain of this draft class team of the year. So he's got the leadership abilities. This guy is going to be someone that eventually will be a captain at the Hawks or wherever, if he does move on future. Captain the Vic Metro team. He was second in the time trial. He gets around, he gets the footy, leather poisoning, like Tom Mitchell there. And all the notes from the draft have been about how elite this guy is at centre bounces. So he's going to be there from day one. They're going to be getting him into the AFL system. We know how important centre bounce attendances are for a fantasy score. I think we've got to, this guy is going to be an absolute, serious player. I know it's just easy to pick a high draft pick and just be like, yep, that guy's going to be a star. But, I'd ask the question, what more could you possibly want from a bloke entering the draft? And the fact that I think he went to 7th might look back on and be like, this guy's an all-time, massive get. Could be the player that they would have hoped to get maybe if they bottom out this year and get one. And I will just say, all the trials are currently going on at the moment. I've been keeping an eye on him. He looks red hot. So, yeah.
I love the pick. I think it's really good. And for someone who can win the ball so easily, I think he's going to have opportunity in the early rounds of this season. I think he can break in if O'Meara goes down with another injury or Warple's not performing again. They're going to slot him in. They got him for a reason. They got him at 7 for a reason, and that's to play some footy early on. So he's definitely going to be one to watch, not only in 5 years to come, 10 years to come, because we know Dynasty is such a big part of our platform, but he could be someone who you can put in and slot in at your M5 position from this year.
Yeah, for sure. And if you look at the pairing as well with Tom Mitchell and what his strength is, he leads the league in uncontested possessions per game. This isn't the same case for your pick. Josh Ward is an inside mid. He likes to bang in there. He likes to get the tough contested possessions. So this could be a nice little 1-2 punch between Tom Mitchell and Ward eventually once they get a bit of chemistry together. So I love that pick as well.
Yeah, so we'll see. Again, I've made bold claims in the past looking at you, Brandon Ingham, in the NBA, and that have made me look silly. But yeah, that is one I'm happy to be held up for because, yeah, I've just loved everything I've seen from him. And I'm not going to make a joke about how I wish he can come to Port later on. We will move on to some of the upside potential players. So as you can see there, I've got CJ, and that's what I'm going to call you, mate.
CJ.
So I'm not going to try and pronounce your name. I'm sorry. We've already butchered a few more. I saw this guy tear up the Swans this year. When they were the Hawks won probably maybe their best game for the year. They came to Sydney on a Thursday night and just blitzed them. I thought he was one of the best players in the park. Super exciting to watch. And then with Warple as well, you were spoken about him. Disappointing year, but I still think he's got that huge upside. And yeah, I looked to the year when Tom Mitchell broke his leg and Warple was a gun. And I think it was more of an opportunity, the amount of he was playing that Tom Mitchell role. And we saw how good he was. So I just think with Mitchell coming back in, it was a little bit of, I don't know what I'm going to be doing here with myself. So if that space does open up or Mitchell does move on, then yeah, expect him to jump back in. So what about you guys? Who do you guys go with your picks?
So I've gone with the same with CJ there. I was going to have a crack at pronouncing the name, but I don't want to get that wrong. So sorry about that. But you look at him. He's 16 games in last season, right? He's doubled his fantasy GDS output per game from the season prior again. He's at 84 currently. He's a defender on the team. We're predicting that they're going to be doing a lot more defending the seasons come on. He's extremely young. As you said, he's quite an electric player as well, can run off the half back. We've spoken about a couple of these different players over the past couple, but he has sort of glimpses of Lockie Whitfield in him. I would love to see where he can be in a couple of years' time, and he's just someone I'm going to be keeping an eye on. And if I can stash him away really early, in our game as we talk about the trading, the auction house buying him, if I can get him at a really, really reasonable price, that's a player I might just stash in the club and then come back in a year or two's time and his value might double or triple. So, yeah.
Well, we've got a good opportunity because for those who have been following along, he did his PCL round 17 last year.
Yes.
So knee injuries, you're just never sure. So, again, I think there's the upside there, but you just always want to hold out to see how that goes. So, potentially a very good buy low opportunity for CJ. So, Kerm, who have you got?
Yes, I've gone with two young mids. The first one being Finn McGuinness, who's a third-generation Hawkie. He was picked up last year in the 2020 draft, and played 3 games last year, but he might get some opportunity early on. I'm really keen to see how he goes in pre-season. We'll get some stats up, and I'm sure we'll touch on him to see if he gets that. But Finn McGuinness, and I've gone with Ward as well. He's so exciting. He was so close to being my future star as well. But for me, Ward, he could definitely, I agree with you, he could definitely be one of the best ball winners in the league in the next couple of years, if not earlier.
This is just something I've always thought, but there's something about number 7 picks in the draft. I don't know. I just feel like if you were to go back and have a look at every number 7 pick in the draft, I think they've all just been guns. I don't know. Someone fact check that.
We'll have a look ourselves.
We'll go have a look and we'll come back to that, whether I've just pulled that. But yeah, anytime a player gets picked at 7, I don't know if it was like Wingard or something went at 7 or something as well. I don't know. So yeah, maybe
7's the new number 1.
Yeah, me just talking shit. It's time to move on to our dynasty potential. So this is my opinion on where I see the next 3 to 5 years of the Hawks. As you can see there, I've got them in tier 4. I do not think that they are going to have a very good time. I've spoken about some good young players they have. So, you can make the case to the tail end of that sort of 5-year thing. They could be pushing tier 3, but I still think they've got to bottom out before they come back up. And there is some parts of this list I really, really don't love. So, yeah, tier 4 for me.
Completely agree. I hate this list. I just think it's built so poorly. It's not win now. It's not built for the future either. It's just weirdly in between. So list management does need to change. There does need to be some big changes and some harsh calls in this next off-season. So I completely agree that the Hawthorne Footy Club is not in a good way right now, which is weird to say given when we grew up watching footy. But yeah, it's a bit of a shame that Hawthorne are now on the still on the decline, really.
Can I give you a stat? Yeah. So they've got the 9th oldest list, or had the 9th oldest list last year, and the 6th most games played. So Burgoyne at 40 and 400 games will drop that average down. But yeah, you're spot on. It's like, where is this list? They're not rebuilding. They're not
very
winning
confusing.
It's like, yeah. How'd you see it, Tom?
Mate, I didn't agree with you last episode. I'm back with you on this one. I love all the points that everyone made. They're in that awkward middle right now. No one really knows the direction of where they're going to be in the next couple of years. I can see them just not making the finals for those years, and there's a couple moves, maybe delisting some players, adding some new players in. They need to shake some things up if it doesn't start working out soon, and I'm predicting that it'll be at the end of this year or next.
Yeah, fantastic. I think we'll leave it at there for the Hawks. We are, of course, getting very excited for the season ahead. Keen to see if they can prove us wrong. We're also keen to see what everyone thinks of Game Day Squad, our platform launching on Monday. So, again, if you're a Hawks fan or if you're any other fan of any of the teams, go back and have a look at what we've done. We've also, throughout the different episodes, talked about some other snippets of some really cool things we're expecting with Game Day Squad. But, Tom, before we go, there's some things you need our listeners and our viewers to do.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks for listening to the Hawks episode. If you have stayed for this long, please leave a like, subscribe, and push the post notifications on. We've got so much new content for all the remaining teams coming out that you're going to want to listen to before the fantasy season. All of our socials will be in the description. Also, check out our Discord. We'll have that in there as well, the link. And that'll be a wrap, guys. Thank you very much. We'll catch you later.
Yeah, just quickly, we've got the Demons next. A bit of excitement. So I think that's one we're all looking forward to. Yeah. So check out for that one. For you guys, it'll probably be a couple of days. For us, it'll probably be a couple of minutes. So look forward to seeing you all then. Cheers.